امتى في حمام بالمدرسة؟ طلع
ياسمين
شو قلنا؟
أي وسام.
لازم نودي الولاد على بيوتهم عند اهلهم.
فينا نروق شوي؟
ما بدي ترجع بالباص اليوم، اوكي؟ الوضع مش منيح.
دور البزرق
ما تخبري حدا معي.
What's up, everybody? This is Fred Richani. We have right here on the line a very special guest. He's a critically acclaimed producer, director, filmmaker, and for good reason. He's done everything from documentaries to music videos to the critically acclaimed drama 1982, available now for streaming on Amazon and Apple TV, discussing the 1982 Lebanon War. We are talking to the incredibly talented Oualid Mouaness. Oualid, thank you so much for the time. How's everything going?
Hey, thank you. What an intro. Oh my God. I'm very good. Thank you. It's a pleasure to be on.
Pleasure to have you on. Let's talk about the great news. Your film, 1982, which made its rounds around film festivals across the globe, critically acclaimed for good reason, now available on streaming. We want to talk about how you made it and everything else, but how does it feel right now as a filmmaker, this passion project, to finally be on the other side where now it's available for everybody to check out?
It feels amazing because it was a very, very long trip. We had so many challenges because the film premiered right at the beginning of COVID, and then it was supposed to come out in 2020, and then COVID happened, and we weren't sure if it was going to make it. And then finally, now it also had a theatrical run, which is really wonderful, which just ended, and that for me was a major reward, and I think it puts the film on the map. And now that it's available for everybody who's been asking for it, it's very rewarding. And what's been fantastic is that a lot of schools and school programs in different countries have been picking up the film, which is even more rewarding for me.
I just got to say, I'm not just saying it because you're on the line. It is an incredible film, very powerful, and not necessarily just about the 1982 war, but just like a microcosm, as I mentioned, of like the emotions and everything else. So this is a topic that hasn't really been covered a lot in any kind of medium. So what kind of inspired you to take action, and what inspired you to kind of tell it in this kind of story?
One, I'm Lebanese, and I just felt like somehow, one, it's based on my last day of school in Lebanon, 1982, and it happens to be 1982 where there was an invasion and it was brutal. But the more important thing is nobody ever tells the story of the people. So the film is really a microcosm of Lebanese society and of us, of just the people who never want to participate in war, and how I just wanted to tell a story about us, about love, about how everything is stronger than war, honestly. And it was important because I feel it's a message to the world as well about who we are as Lebanese people, which everybody perceives us as a warring nation, a nation with but like, who are we? And this film goes to the core of who we are. You know, that's what I wanted to do.
As a Lebanese American myself and somebody with a lot of Lebanese friends, I know a lot of people who love the film for good reason, but it's an interesting time we live in, right? We're recording this interview in 2023. You know, a few years ago, maybe this film wouldn't have made its rounds, right? A few years ago, we wouldn't have Rami and Mo and all this Middle Eastern and North African representation. And overall, what do you think kind of turned the tide over the years as somebody that's been in the business for decades now?
I think it's been a long time coming. It's also us coming into the business. I mean, there's way more of us. And, you know, what's happening is now I think we have a critical mass and we all are sharing the same message. We're trying to get our story out there. We're trying to become visible to the world because we've been sidelined for a very long time. And I've been in Hollywood for about 25 years, and I've seen this slowly shifting. It has not been easy, but our stories are starting to get told. They're starting to get visible, and I think that's priceless. And there's more to come. You know, there's a generation of young Middle Eastern, North African filmmakers, directors that is just like really preparing some gorgeous projects to come in the next like 4 to 5 years.
You and I have a mutual friend in Has Sulaiman, who some people may know in Marvel's Eternals, great guy. And he starred in a film called The Visitor, which is about almost 16 years old now, still holds the test of time. And he talked to me about how when he went to screenings, there were critics that went up to him and said, you know, I never looked at Lebanese people as human before. I've never saw them in this light, which is just it's so sad to hear. But at the same time, it's amazing how art can move people. Did you have that experience in any screenings of 1982? Did you have people come up to you and say, man, I never thought of it that way?
Both actually, 1982, and I made a short film which was Oscar shortlisted right before, which is called The Rifle, the Jackal, the Wolf, and the Boy in 2017. And between both films, people would come up and be like, we didn't know Lebanon looked like this. We didn't know people in Lebanon were like this, because somehow they suddenly found themselves in these stories as well, even as foreigners. I mean, one of the most powerful screenings I had for 1982 was in Kentucky, in Bowling Green, where there was not a single Lebanese person in the audience. And the Q&A lasted an hour and a half. And it was, for me, it's like, because it really illuminated, it shed a light on who we are, and completely broke a stereotype. And my work's purpose is really to break the stereotype and create the like showing us for who we are and universalizing it.
So you feel like the art that you're creating is slowly but surely kind of healing and breaking these stereotypes?
100%. I mean, I think also, I think what we see with Mo, what we see with Shireen Davis's work as well, is really about breaking the stereotype. And even with that, it's actually hard to get Americans in the US, like in particular, to come and see the film. When they see the film, they're like, oh my God, we had no idea. We had no idea we were so similar. We had no idea Lebanon was so beautiful. We had no idea that the people are so mixed. And in 1982, as you saw, it's like really a reflection of the pluralism of the country, which for me was very important to represent.
And I also love the human aspect in a sense that with the kids, I mean, they're just, at the end of the day, they're just kids. Like there's one scene where some kid is like, oh, you're so lucky you got to see Brooke Shields, you know, in a film. Just, yeah.
But that's true. I mean, we're connected, you know? Mm-hmm. Yeah, 100%.
Definitely. And the cast you had was absolutely incredible. I mean, Nadine Labaki, who's already a legend in the making, and the kids that you cast, I mean, that was, wow. Were all those kids that you cast making their film debut?
Mm-hmm. Wow. Yeah. I had to learn from them a lot. They were fantastic, and they challenged me, and I challenged them. I had to become their friend. I had to give them some of my secrets to tell them about my crushes and my loves, so they can tell me about theirs. So we were able to have a very candid discussion, like equals, not like adult kid. And I think this was very important. Yeah. I mean, I learned so much from them.
What would you say you learned the most from those kids?
What did I learn most from those kids? That kids are way more intuitive than we ever think we are. And we tend to forget how emotionally intelligent we were as kids. And I think we are more emotionally intelligent as kids than we are as adults. Because as adults, we question. As kids are very honest. And as people grow up, people lose their honesty because we start really compartmentalizing and picking our phrases, you know, just navigating things differently. So kids are way freer than adults, that's for sure.
And as far as Nadine, as I mentioned, amazing actress, amazing director. Was it tough to lock her down with her busy schedule?
You know, she loved the script from the get-go, so which was really helpful. It was tough. I wasn't sure. We weren't sure it was going to work out. She wanted to do the film, but she was also in the midst of post-production of Capernaum at that time, and very stressed out. And I'm like, okay, Nadine, she's like, okay, let me know your dates, and I'll see if it works out. And then when I gave her my dates ended up falling exactly on the time she's taking a vacation. And she's like, I can give you a part of my vacation, I can't give it all to you. So we negotiated days, but she was absolutely wonderful and so gracious. And you know, because Nadine as a director, Nadine had been established and she had done 2 films before. And this was my first film. But she made it very clear. She's like, listen, Walid, with you, like, I'm an actor and I need you to tell me everything as you want it, because I'm here to live the role. And that was phenomenal because she was wonderful to direct and a delight to work with.
She absolutely did a phenomenal job. Everybody did a phenomenal job, all involved. As I mentioned earlier, 1982, currently streaming now on Amazon and Apple TV, all major streaming platforms. Definitely check it out. But Walid, I got to ask you about your whole background here, because you look at this film and nobody would think like, oh, this is this guy's first real feature film or anything like that. And it's fantastic. But your background is actually in documentaries and music videos. You've worked with the likes of Drake, Rihanna, if I'm not mistaken, I believe Katy Perry as well, Audioslave. The list goes on and on. How did you get into show? How did you get into showbiz? And when did you make that transition from music and documentaries to feature films and telling these stories?
Everything was working in parallel with me. It's like, I was doing commercials, I was doing music videos, I was doing documentaries, and I just did projects I loved. And I found myself doing something that I love, which is basically I worked with, I ran a company, a music video production company and commercials. So I was very fortunate to work. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. It just happened in parallel. I'm very proud of the body of work that I've done. I really always said no to something that I didn't want to do. And this was very empowering when you do that. And then I had my first feature, and then I moved into music videos and commercials. Then I had the documentary Rise. And then I did a documentary about Paris Hilton for Warner Brothers. And on and on. And I really navigated all these worlds. I don't know. I mean, I just do projects I like, and that's key. And I think you slowly work in the industry and reputation usually precedes you. And thankfully, I still get the calls.
That's great. And how did you break in the first place?
Started out as a PA and did a really good job, and then moved up very quickly. Within a year, I moved up from production assisting to producing. So it was super rapid. Was a production assistant on 2 jobs. You meet people as well. People see what you can do. You take the bull by the horn, as people say. And yeah, I just wasn't afraid to challenge myself at a young age. And then that's what was in 1998, and then I ended up editing a film out of the blue that went to South by, which was Peter Sarsgaard's first film, and I co-produced that film as well. And then from that, I got hired to run a production company in 2002, just because of just my approach to things and my practical sense. I don't know, it just happens, but it's not luck. I think it's just like about working your way up, I mean, all the relationships that I built were not pre-built. Like, they were all built when I moved here, just through meeting people, word of mouth. Oh, try this guy. And when you're young and starting up, you really kind of also do the work, and it was fun. And I loved it. So it wasn't easy, but it was fun.
Did you always kind of have your eye on some kind of film, TV, production? There's always like the old like Lebanese stereotype or Arab stereotype, where it's like, are you a doctor? Are you an engineer? Are you this? Or did you always kind of have that kind of entertainment side on your mind? I
did. Ever since I was a teenager, I kind of knew I was going to do that. And I knew I wanted to become a filmmaker. And when I moved to LA, of course, like, it wasn't about just moving directly into directing, because I felt like, for me, directing was storytelling. So I really didn't have an interest in directing short form like music videos and commercials unless something spoke to me. So I decided to produce. And I think everything is one and the same. As long as I'm close to this creative process, for me, it was very satisfying in very different capacities. I remember telling my parents that I wanted to do this when I was like 13, 14. I was in Liberia. And it wasn't really taken very seriously. So my dad did take it seriously, but it was only when my dad came to the first play I directed in Lebanon that he's like, okay, now I understand. Keep doing what you're doing. And because he loved it so much. And that was empowering.
you were born in Liberia and grew up in Lebanon, and then eventually moved to the States. Is that the timeline correct?
Yes, exactly. I went back and forth between Liberia and Lebanon, and then because of the war, when there was a war in Liberia, I was in Lebanon. When there were problems in Lebanon, I was in Liberia. It's like so. I would say I'm a total child of war, of two war zones. But at the same time, I wouldn't change anything about the way I grew up, because I kind of feel I have a very optimistic perspective in spite of all of that. You know, and we had a lot of, I mean, our household was a household full of love, even though we weren't always with my parents. We never felt that they were not there.
Well, we really do appreciate your time, Oualid. Before we let you go, we always like to ask our guests some more lighthearted questions, random rapid fire questions, just to get to know them better. Are you ready?
Yes.
Favorite Lebanese dish?
Shawarma chicken.
Love that. Favorite spot in Lebanon?
Hamena,
Huh?
the town.
That's where you're from, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Adjacent. Yes.
Okay. What's your favorite thing to do in Hamena?
There's something called the artist house in Hamena, which I love, and just walking around really and walking in the nature of it. So. And you know, there's a wadi there that's also connected to Shbaniya, this town, which is known as a wadi where writers used to go and meditate.
Were there any actors or filmmakers who inspired you to get into the industry?
Really, Stanley Kubrick, because all his films. I mean, as a filmmaker, it was really Stanley Kubrick, because all of his films are very different and very varied, and I feel like he's one of those people that's inspired me. And really, in general, films that moved me. There was a movie in particular called Baghdad Cafe, which I saw in Liberia on video, and I saw it like 4 times in one day. It was very slow and boring for my father, but I was so riveted by it. And I think that was one of the triggers, actually. Actors, not really, outside of, not really. Like, acting was never, like, no. It was really about the heart of the films that really drove me in.
You've been doing this for a long time. You mentioned 25 years. You've had a lot of great moments. I'm sure you've had a lot of wacky moments too. What's your most awkward moment as a filmmaker?
That's a tough one. That makes for a good story. Yeah, I was on a shoot actually quite recently that had 2 fires. 2 fires. It was like our catering truck was on fire, and then our picture car was on fire on the same day. Oh. Yes, and this was all before we had to start shooting, so that was kind of out of control. And then I had I worked with an artist. I won't name her. She was very, very special, and she one, as sweet as she is, she lied a lot. And we went through in the space of 1 month, we went through about 4 assistants because she would throw everybody under the bus. But it was all about her obsession with shoes.
Okay. But at the end of the day, you got the shot like a great filmmaker, right?
Yes, we did get the shot. Yes. And then the most memorable, though, positive experience of any project I've done was actually spending 3 days with David Bowie and having the opportunity to make food day in, day out, because we were in a very creative space for there were 6 of us. That's it. So that was like the most pinch me moment of my life.
That's so cool. So,
yeah.
You've got to rub shoulders and work with a lot of incredibly talented celebrities, legends, you name it. Is there anybody, for my family, I know they have like their faves. Is there anybody in your family, like they have a fave? They're like, oh my God, we can't believe you worked with this person.
It depends on who. Yes. I mean, it depends on, really, I go to my nieces and nephews, and really they're sort of enamored with the artists that I've worked with, essentially. And really Rihanna and Lady Gaga and those, and Lady Gaga was only in 2020. Actually, we had a project together during the pandemic, which was pretty phenomenal. I mean, those are, I mean, I always use my nieces and nephews as a reference in terms of like, okay, am I cool? Am I not? Yeah.
Hey, as a new uncle, that's good to know. So I'll keep that. I'll keep that in mind in order to stay cool and relevant.
Yeah. It's like sometimes my brother's like, "Well, can you please talk to them about this and this and this?" Because because they can't. But when it comes from me, it works because of just the people I work with who they're fans of. Yeah, it's just funny.
What's the best piece of advice you could give for success?
That where there's a will, there's a way, really, and just stay focused. And actually, I don't believe in luck. I believe in hard work. And I think if you put the time comes back to you. It gives you a lot.
And can you, if you don't mind me asking, can you just elaborate a little bit on that as far as like putting in the time? Because a lot of people can put in, the hours and everything else, but if they're not, taking a certain approach or doing it right, they may stay stuck. So like, was there any point in time where you felt you were stuck in your career that like where you said, absolutely. Okay, I have to transit, like move, take a different route? I
constantly feel stuck in my career, even now.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah, we're constantly stuck. If you're ambitious, you constantly have the feeling of you're stuck, that you're never there. Like, and every time you get to this, and everybody's like, "Oh my God, you got here." You're like, "Yeah, but like, there's this next thing I want to do." You know what I mean? The notion is that, like, don't let getting stuck wear you down. Getting stuck may cause you to shift a little bit, and this is really important that you actually are able to read the signs and what works and what doesn't work. But generally, that's only a motivator, I think. And there are challenges, and nothing comes easy. And what's interesting is a lot of people think like, oh, that it took nothing to get to do what you do, but no, it actually takes a lot, and everything is a compounding of everything else. And there's no drop too small in my world. Like, and some of the best artists I've worked with, and the biggest, as a matter of fact, Annie Lennox, David Bowie, even Gaga, they know everybody on the team. And there is no position too small, nor any position too big, because it's like a giant puzzle.
That's great. And so, I mean, they say in film all the time, it takes a village. So based on your experience with the people the amazing artists you've worked with, like, you want to know it's about having not just the hard work, the dedication, but and pivoting when needing to, but also having the right team around you and respecting 100%. That team, right?
Yeah, and that's and building the right team is very hard. It takes time. It takes time to read people, and the key is like you follow your instinct. And as a matter of fact, I've learned the hard way that whenever I haven't, I've paid a very dear price. Mm-hmm. Like, your instinct is your intuition, and it's your most powerful asset. So, and people will try to divert you from it, actually.
Yeah, for sure. Fantastic insight. I appreciate that. All right, Oualid, well, we'll get chatting on another high note. Why should people watch 1982?
To get moved. And why should people to get moved, to live a life, to feel a slice of life that they would not feel, and for us as Lebanese to remember, lest we forget, that history should not repeat itself, to make the world a better place. I mean, I think I made the film to make the world a better place and create an understanding of who we are.
Well, Oualid, we thank you so much for the time. Before we let you go, where can we find you online, and where can we find you next? Any projects you're allowed to talk about?
Yeah, actually, as a matter of fact, online, I am on social media with my name, Oualid Mouaness, and then the film has its own 1982, the movie. And I'm on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. That's it, I think. Yes. With regards to my next project, yes, actually, I'm in the throes of trying to finish a second draft of a movie that was commissioned by Kennedy Marshall Company in Los Angeles. And so I'm adapting a book, which hopefully we'll all like, and we'll probably push it into directing. And I'm hoping that I'll be shooting this at the end of the year, early next. So that's it.
I'll have one more bonus question if that's okay.
Yes, you can. Okay. Yeah.
Because you mentioned you're currently writing right now. You live a busy life. You have a family. You're doing a whole lot. What's kind of like your approach to kind of finishing a script? A lot of people work. You have an odd job, things like that.
It's not easy because a lot of the writing, I spend more time thinking when I'm writing than I am actually writing, because once you figure stuff out, you write fast. The most important thing is to leave your phone away, put it away. I actually leave my phone when I leave the house. When I'm having my writing days on my writing time, I actually leave my phone at home and I go somewhere to write. And when I'm writing, I'm away from my phone for 6 hours because it's the biggest enemy. So, yeah.
Love that. Well, Lee, Thank you so much for your time. It was an absolute pleasure.
Thank you.